I think at this point, we've made our dissatisfaction with Universes Beyond pretty clear.
Yeah, except for the IPs that I really like.
I think we have to acknowledge the fact that it's not very likely that Magic diverts course.
No, I think there's a lot of players right now that are very hopeful. I think there's a lot of players that want to see Universes Beyond fail because they think that that's going to just end up inevitably leading to the death of Universes Beyond, the resurgence of in-universe sets. I don't know if it's that clear-cut, though.
We figured we'd take some time to talk about 4 different scenarios, the paths forward for Magic the Gathering, and which of these could lead to Universes Beyond, at least being sidelined, but maybe being stopped entirely.
Distraction makers.
2026, we're going to see a lot of Universes Beyond sets, and I think a lot of people are sort of waiting because last year we saw the biggest sets coming out, but we also saw the first sort of seemingly maybe dud set with Spider-Man being a Universes Beyond set and not performing as well as I think that they had hoped.
It was definitely the first time we saw, I wouldn't say the first time we've seen the first time we saw an absolute failure. Not the first time we saw an underperforming Universes Beyond.
Assassin's Creed,
Assassin's Creed was pretty poor, it seems. Obviously we don't have sales data from Wizards, but it seemed like Assassin's Creed was just sort of a blip and then they moved on. It was interesting because Spider-Man was supposed to be a smaller set and then decided to make it a full set, which I think led to a lot of the problems with it. But it was sort of the first time I think that Wizards felt a check on Universes Beyond generally, and that it does matter how much effort they're putting into these things. They can't just put whatever brand on it they want that they think is popular and expect it to succeed.
And so now that there's some sort of an exposure of potential weaknesses, right, moving forward, it'll be interesting to see, like, depending on what happens with 2026, I think this is kind of us speculating on what then that might lead to in 2027, how this might end up changing Magic moving forward.
So let's talk through these different scenarios. The first one is that Universes Beyond, the Universes Beyond sets succeed this year, and in-universes sets succeed this year.
Everyone wins.
Everybody wins.
Psych.
Right, yeah. So if this is the case, it does seem like we will continue to get more Universes Beyond, partially because I think one of the biggest problems that Universes Beyond was solving for Wizards of the Coast is the ability for them to produce lots of sets. It seems like they got that the bottleneck that they had was that they just couldn't produce sets quick enough because they had to produce a whole world in order to make a Magic set, right? We could go return to other planes and things, and that would save some time. But you had to reinvent the story. You had to have a reason to go back to that plane, or you had to make a whole new world up whole cloth. And then enter Universes Beyond, and suddenly Wizards of the Coast can go from producing 4 sets a year to 7 sets a year. Why not continue producing even more sets to the point where you reach saturation, right? We don't know what that saturation point is yet.
People keep saying that we've reached it, but clearly that's not true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people online right now are kind of saying like Universes Beyond is a failure, like nobody likes this or whatever, or why is Wizards doing this? And like clearly it's effective. It's making them more money than ever before, and it's bringing in more players to the game than ever before. I also think that it's important to acknowledge that like if this scenario happens, Universes Beyond succeeds, in-universe sets succeed. We're sort of talking about this in a really simplified binary way of succeed versus failure. But the reality is that Universes Beyond sets succeeding means that it probably has to make much more than what an in-universe set makes.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of licensing deals they have or whatever. We don't have any, we don't have any of that information, so we don't know.
But if Spider-Man made this exact same amount of money as something like, let's say, Edge of Eternities, I think that would be seen as Spider-Man being potentially a failure. Sure. And so really we're talking like if a Universes Beyond set succeeds, it means it has to make a lot of money, which just means that if that's making a lot of money, right, and that's that's worth the potential of sort of saturating the market, right, and covering up the Magic brand with all these other different brands and IPs, then the juice is worth the squeeze, I suppose, in Wizards' eyes, financially speaking.
Anecdotally, from Wizards of the Coast, their initial impressions of Lorwyn have been quite positive. So it is possible that we're on track for in-universe sets this year to do well.
Yeah.
Lorwyn might be the best in universe set we have this year, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, it's hard to say if that or Strixhaven. We don't know enough about Reality Fractures to know what that's going to be. But
the world turned upside down, and apparently we're coming back to the Planeswalker stories with Jace. And
it's still hard to say if that's going to actually be enough to like bring people in. I think generally a lot of Magic fans like Planeswalkers.
Other thing of note for Lorwyn, they also mentioned that they don't normally release sets this early in the year. They normally would wait, which is something that we commented on in one of the last video we were talking about this, where, normally product releases in January, not a great idea because it's right after the holiday season. Usually you're going to wait either till February or March for people to get their tax returns back, and then that's when you'd kind of kick off with product launches for the year. So the question just becomes, what is the lesson they take from that? That they can release a set earlier in the year than they thought?
Right.
Or that Lorwyn in particular was good?
The only way to test that is to do it several times, but that they don't have the time to do that.
Right. To me says, all right, well, we got 7 sets this year. We might get 8 sets next year.
Woo!
Yeah.
Keep going!
All right, so let's talk about scenario number 2. Scenario number 2 is that Universes Beyond succeeds and in-universe sets fail.
I think this is probably the worst scenario.
This is definitely worst case scenario.
Yeah. Failure for an in-universe set, like I said, for the last scenario, is that like Universe Beyond sets have to hit a higher bar probably. So for an in-universe set to fail, it has to do very poorly. And like that, it seems like that's maybe something like what Aether Drift possibly did. I don't think Aether Drift was a complete dud, but it definitely performed the worst out of the year.
Here's my big concern on this actually, is that in the scrutiny of in-universe sets is actually higher. I think that Universe Beyond sets might end up with a lower floor, although we don't even really know how Spider-Man did, right? Yeah. That's the worst in-universe set. But Universe Beyond set...
No, you said it wrong.
I said it wrong. Yeah, it's the worst Universes Beyond set we've had. But the ceiling for Universes Beyond sets is so far beyond in-universe sets that you could even observe, like there's a possibility that they might consider in-universe sets a risk because they don't have that high of a ceiling.
Sure, yeah.
So they're
seeing it as like a lottery ticket essentially for Universe Beyond, where like it could perform worse, but because it can perform so much better, it might be worth it. That's
my biggest concern is that, and honestly, like once you open the door to this, it's like, okay, well, why would we bother to make our own stuff anymore? Because the ceiling, if we hit Universes Beyond correctly, the ceiling is just so much higher that it's worth taking those risks. Yeah. And if we're able to release 7, 8, or 8 sets a year, we can mitigate those risks because we'll hit the big ones with something like Final Fantasy or Lord of the Rings or whatever it is to make up for any of the ones that didn't do as well.
It's hard to say, but how many failures would have to happen in universe for this to be a thing? I'm glad that it sounds like Lorwyn is doing well so far, because I think Lorwyn was the one, when we speculated in our Lorwyn video, that like not the most iffy, because like I said, we don't know about Reality Fracture, but like I had assumed that Strixhaven would probably do better than Lorwyn.
Wizards continuing to build their own in-universe sets, their own worlds, I do think is important. We can look at Lego as another example of this, where their collaborations with Star Wars and all the other Lego IP crossovers that they've had have been very successful, but they still have things like Bionicle. They still have their own IPs. I think the Ninjago, that stuff too.
I think Ninjago is probably like the biggest one they ever had. But I think the thing is that like Magic still isn't at that place that they, as weird as it is, Magic doesn't have its Ninjago. They don't have an IP that transcends the card game yet, right?
Okay.
They've gone into novels, they've gone into video games, but like there's no TV show and movie, and I think that's where you're going to get a huge majority of the world understanding what your IP is and being familiar with it. Right.
Yeah, that is an interesting point.
And so I'm actually, look, I don't know if it'll do well or not. I have no idea, but I'm very curious to see how Magic's Netflix series will do and whether that's going to open it up for the game or if it's just going to completely bomb and not have any impact or ripple whatsoever. But I think that's what Magic needs, is Magic needs to be able to emphasize its own in-universe sets more and have ways of transcending its IP outside of the game in order to be relevant outside of it, so that they don't have to rely on these other IPs to try and bring people in.
If we look at it in comparison to something like D&D, like D&D piggybacks on Stranger Things, right? Even D&D, there are some D&D things that have escaped and sort of reached escape velocity beyond the game. And a lot of that has to do with the novels and stuff like R.I. Salvatore novels or some of the Dragonlance stuff. Those sort of things I think have entered more into the public consciousness outside of Dungeons and Dragons themselves. But none of those have been like, superstar successful. Right. Stranger Things, I think reached an extreme level of success that I think D&D really benefited from. Yeah. So I guess that's the risk here that we can say is like, all right, well, if Magic was to stop producing in-universe sets entirely, that they're not building up this opportunity for them to have some kind of successful thing outside of Magic, unless we end up with some kind of Stranger Things show where they play Magic the Gathering, and then it's
right. Which, I mean, funny enough, I think there are shows that people mention Magic, right?
Probably,
but it's just it hasn't quite hit in that same way.
Okay, so the next scenario, which is the one we can all hope for, which is that Universes Beyond fails and in-universe succeeds. And look, Lorwyn, they've already said it's succeeding. That means this is a possibility.
I mean, sure.
This is the only one that might lead to a world where we get less Universes Beyond sets.
Possibly.
Yeah. But even then, let's say all the Universes Beyond sets this year fail, we end up in a reality where there's other ones that have succeeded, so they're going to keep trying it. And I think maybe in this instance, they sort of they might taper back a little bit. So maybe we go back to 50-50 in Universes Beyond. But it doesn't go away. They've already had such extreme success that like I think for the foreseeable future for Magic, Universes Beyond will be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the previous scenario, like I don't know how many Universes Beyond sets would have to fail before they go, okay, well, this just isn't working out for us, right? Or if what ends up happening is they just end up sort of like changing how Universes Beyond affects Magic, right? Maybe they roll it back, and instead of having sets be legal and standard and all the other formats, they just go right back to, okay, it's just Commander products.
Secret layers, Commander products.
Or Secret layers, yeah. Like they just decide like, okay, well, Commander players are the ones that are really caring the most about this type of IP crossover. So let's just have it be in that. We'll do smaller drops, less investment, and that'll be fine. I imagine, though, that the reason they shifted Universe Beyond over to sets, though, is because booster packs is the thing that ends up selling the most, makes them the most money.
Look, if the reality is that Universe Beyond is here to stay, but they're more selective with the brands that they're working with because they found out that certain things too far outside of the bounds don't really make sense for the game.
Like Ninja Turtles?
Like Ninja Turtles, or maybe even superheroes, right? And it's like the audience wants fantasy-inspired things. That's what's more in line with Magic's systems and flavor. Right. Maybe that's what happens. We sort of get a scaling back, and we end up with like things like Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy, and I guess even Avatar. But like that to me is like at least a better outcome.
That's true.
It's still not great, right? For those of us that really like the fact that they break new ground on these in-universe sets, they come up with these new and interesting worlds, and those worlds are in service of the mechanics and not vice versa. That I don't know. Yeah. It's not it would be a better scenario than everything being Universes Beyond, but I don't know.
Yeah, if we assume that what they're doing right now and for the last couple of years is essentially just throwing out anything at the wall and seeing what sticks, if what ends up sticking is Lord of the Rings, Final Fantasy, Last Airbender, etc., then they can start making some connections and deciding like, okay, well, this is the through line for all of these IPs, so let's find more IPs like that because that's working for us. And that's not the worst. That's not the worst scenario. And it might still inevitably end up leading to like less Universes Beyond sets as they're being more selective with it.
Well, and that's even a story we can kind of tell right now, right? We can look at the stuff that succeeded, the stuff that hasn't, and generally speaking, the stuff that has succeeded has been stuff that is a bit more in line with what people's expectations of Magic the Gathering are. But the other thing to keep in mind here is that they're doing quite a bit of work to change those expectations, right? As much as we liked Edge of Eternities, I can't help but feel like it was an attempt to broaden how people think about the game Magic the Gathering.
I mean, we haven't seen a superhero plane yet.
That's true.
Not yet.
That's kind of my point, though.
You think they're going to do that, though? You think they're going to do it? You know what's funny is that they should have just done that so that they didn't have to do through the Omen paths. Instead, they had to like scramble and be like, let's make spider things. But they could have just made like a superhero plane.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's funny if they're like, well, we're going to have Marvel because we got to have Marvel. That's a great IP crossover. But we could never have a superhero plane because that's not magic. That's like, it throws all logic out the window at that point. Because it's like, well, you're admitting that
you're making
the Marvel should be in that.
You're making a really good point. You're making a great point. Is that if you can't envision, if you can't envision an in-universe set, why would the Universes Beyond set fly?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, unfortunately, though, what that means is...
I'm advocating for a superhero set.
Yeah. Which sounds like a fucking disaster, but who knows? Maybe people will love it.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like.
God. I mean, look, here's the lesson they'll take away, is if Edge of Eternities opens the door for Star Trek to do well and people accepting Star Trek as part of Magic, then you're right. That paves the way for... Oh, and then especially if Spider-Man doesn't do well and then Marvel doesn't do well, they're going to be like, oh, well, we gotta broaden how people think about Magic. We got to do an in-universe superhero set. Right. Although, look, I mean, maybe they were like, well, Planeswalkers are basically superheroes.
And that's not totally right.
We did our version of the Avengers with the Justice League.
Because it's a lot different if suddenly it's the Justice League.
You've never heard that?
No.
It's pretty good.
That's what Reality Fracture's actual name is going to be. They're going to expose the real name. And
I can't take credit for it.
Justice League.
Yeah, I read it online somewhere.
No, I never heard of that. Yeah, I mean, it's either that or the Marvel set's going to potentially flop, and then they're just going to say, well, no more superheroes. Superheroes doesn't work.
That's possible.
And
please. Please.
Yeah. But I think that what probably is a better strategy overall, if they're trying to make it more palatable, is, have a better in-universe set to sort of match whatever that IP is that you're trying to gravitate towards.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So final scenario here. Universe Beyond fails. In-universe fails. Everything fails, which we already know is not really the case because Lorwyn succeeded. But if I don't know, let's ignore Lorwyn for a second, and we just say everything else for the rest of the year fails because economics. We enter a recession. Something crazy happens. I still think we just get more Universes Beyond. That doesn't really tell us much of anything. Yeah. Just because I think at that point it would be external factors are the things that are pushing for the failure rather than internal choices.
If everything's failing across the board, then I think it might not have anything to do necessarily with the set. It could be that they just ended up reaching saturation, and we're finally seeing the bubble pop for TCGs.
Sure, that's possible. I think we're still a ways away from that.
I think so too. Yeah, I think people are like, it's right around the corner, and I'm like, no.
No. There's a long road ahead.
The Naruto TCGs is not even out yet, guys. Wait till Pow World hits the scene, and then we'll talk about the bubble popping.
Oh, man.
But I think I agree with you that like if both of them fail, I think it's not going to really lead to that much of a change. And if anything, it still might end up leading to Universe Beyond like being more prevalent. Because again, like you said, the ceiling is so much higher that if everything's failing across the board, you need a hit. And what's the last major hit that you had that was all over? And that was Final Fantasy. So, and before that, it was Lord of the Rings. So, might as well keep trying to do that. That might be the time again that they end up listening to players and finding a through line and being like, well, what's an IP that I think like hits just right? Maybe that's when we'll get our Elden Ring, I
don't even think Elden Ring's popular enough, to be honest.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Hey, there's no fishing pole, though, so.
Passes the test.
Or a toothbrush. I don't know.
Yeah. Whichever.
Maybe it's a double. It's a cross reference. It's like if you have a fishing pole and a toothbrush. If you have a fishing pole and no toothbrush,
it's a maybe.
If you have a toothbrush and no fishing pole, it's a maybe.
Sure.
If
you have neither, then you're like
Nash
sweet
equilibrium
spot.
of toothbrushes and fishing.
So what happens if you have just zero products whatsoever with the IP? Is that also an indicator that there's just not enough interest?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be. I did find that Final Fantasy rinse your mouth out. It's like a rinse cup for brushing your teeth. There was no toothbrushes, but there was a Final Fantasy rinse cup that was worth $270.
What they would have?
Or at least they were trying to sell it for $270.
A rinse cup is just like a smaller normal cup.
It's just a little cup that has Final Fantasy on it.
Okay.
Look, I mean that checks out. That if there's people crazy enough to spend $270 on a little rinse cup with Final Fantasy on it,
I mean, yeah.
They're going to buy a piece of cardboard with it on it, probably.
I guess you're right.
To wrap things up, we're going to have a little bit of hypothetical, of weird territory that has to do with the TCG bubble and the difference between what Magic is doing and what Lego is doing. So Lego has a patent on their bricks, which keeps people from copying Legos. However, Magic does not have a patent on the trading card game or on the trading card. So there's a possibility here that Universes Beyond could backfire spectacularly in that the companies that Magic is teaming up with end up realizing that the Universes Beyond sets that they're making with Magic are so profitable that they want to make their own trading card game. Sure. And they split off and say, hey, thanks, Magic, for doing this market research for us. Glad we made a buck. Now I'm going to go be your competition.
There actually might be some evidence of this. I'm not close enough to the Final Fantasy trading card game to know about this, but there was some recent news about the Final Fantasy trading card game. I believe there's a new set coming out.
Oh, interesting.
And I think I'm only getting advertised that on my feed because of Magic being closely tied to Final Fantasy and so on. So there is a possibility of that. A lot more investment has to go into it. And also, I think there's probably... I don't know if other businesses are thinking this or even considering it. Maybe not. Yeah. But I'd imagine I'd be looking at this going like, by the time we get something to market, is this bubble popping? Like in the next 2 years, 3 years?
I mean, you could rush one of these things out pretty quick if you wanted to.
I mean, at this point, it depends on how low budget they want to go. If it's...
Well, what I mean is a lot of these IPs have a lot of art that's just hanging around. Like it's not like...
That's what I mean by low budget, though. Yeah. If you just decided, like if suddenly Marvel was like, actually, we do want to have a 1v1 physical trading card game, and they just start grabbing a bunch of Marvel art and throwing it together, one, it probably would actually do pretty well. Depending on how it plays. Like, yeah, if Marvel had its own game that they could go and advertise, yeah, it'd probably do pretty well. You're going to get everyone that's ever played Marvel Champions to go and hop onto it. You're going to get like...
It's also so weird, right? Because Wizards of the Coast right now is going, okay, it's great. We're getting people in the door with these Universes Beyond sets, and then they're sticking around for the rest of the Magic sets. Yeah. But what if they had an alternative that was this thing that they actually wanted? They would just go do that, right?
And the thing is there's nothing stopping those games from basically playing very similarly to Magic, but doing a lot of the, modern fixes, quote unquote fixes for people listening with audio that don't know I'm doing air quotes, for Magic's system to make it more palatable to newer players, right? So less interaction, no counter spells, no mana screw, stuff like
Basically
that. Basically Lorcana. Yeah, you turn it into some sort of Lorcana situation, but you stamp Marvel on it and you get people to go over to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a thought that occurred to me when we were talking through the Universes Beyond scenarios, especially because I think, Chris Cox or whatever comes out and he basically says like, all these IPs are lining up to collaborate with us because we have the access to the trading card game players. We've got a monopoly on the trading card game space, and so we're their access point to those fans. And I'm like, you are right now. And look, if you got billions of dollars on the line here, I mean, how much money did Final Fantasy make? Final Fantasy alone makes $1 billion. Yeah. People are going to take notice. They're going to go, woo, okay. I mean,
our IP made $1 billion. Yeah, they're not going to go, Magic made $1 billion. Yeah, that's not what they're thinking. Yeah. So but I do think that, I think so many different people have different impressions and interpretations of IP integrity. And what that really means and whether that's important or not for a particular brand. And I think currently in this day and age, I think a lot of people are thinking differently about their brands and about their IP and what that means in the modern world, right? Yeah. When you see Fortnite, that's essentially a host of all the latest IPs and the newest cultural references. Yeah. I think a lot of people just associate that as being the new norm and that's what you do and that's what people like and that's what you should aim for and strive for. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But I've always assumed, but again, this might be more of an old school approach, I don't know, but I've always associated it as it sounds like it would be better to be the IP that other people want to take your things and are asking for you to go and allow them to use your IP versus you trying to bring people into yours, right? So you should want to have Fortnite asked to put Jason Chandra in as characters, not going, hey, Fortnite, come be in our game.
Right. Right. Or hey, Marvel or whatever. Right. And look, I do think that some of this has to do with this connection to the monoculture, which we talked about before, which is, before the internet really became ubiquitous, there was we all sort of consumed media in a more similar way, so we all were familiar with more brands, IP, intellectual properties. We were all more familiar with some similar ones, right? And so a lot of that stuff before things got so fractured are the things that keep hanging on, right? It's the ninja, a lot of stuff from the 90s, and you start to get into some of the 2000s, 2010s. That's when things start to fracture, and so we're getting, not only are millennials aging up to the point where they're willing to have a lot of disposable income to spend on this stuff, we had that fracture that happened, and it's just a bit more difficult to get something to become established at this point. There's just so much more variety happening, so much more in the long tail of things. There's, Amazon this and blah, 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 whatever. That I do. It is weird though, because you can stop for a minute and go, look, IPs are still being established. Like, new things are still being created. A lot of it kind of is happening in the anime space, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
Where these new things are coming up and they're taking off and people know and care about them. Chainsaw Man, Demon Slayer, all kinds of stuff. But I don't know. I don't think we're that far away from Magic starting to move into that territory. And I think once they figure that out, that's when this really gets turbocharged. But we'll see. I do think that there's a distinct possibility here that Magic is creating their own competition without really realizing it. But also maybe these brands don't care. They're willing to just take the payment and move on with their.
I think a smart long-term strategy is understanding that there's only so many IPs that you can go and print for that are going to be relevant to you in your game. And so instead, I think it would probably be in Magic's best interest right now to use their larger audience that they have. And I'm sure they're trying to do this, but they're trying to convert them obviously into like hardcore Magic players and Magic fans. But I think they need things that transcend the game itself. And right now there's nowhere for them to go. There's novels, but they don't really actively still do novels in the way they used to.
How do you keep those people engaged in the Magic world? And honestly, this might be part of the drawback of having such a fractured, intellectual property in your own game. And then you have all these different worlds. It's like, which one of them is really Magic?
Wait, did you say fractured? Like reality fracture?
Oh shit! This is what it is. This is what reality fracture is. Bring it all together.
If you enjoyed listening to us talk about all the different ways that you might be doomed, please feel free to give us a like and a subscribe, maybe a comment down below.
Discord. It's in the description. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Hey, at least one of those scenarios we weren't doomed.
That's true.
That's a 25% chance.
I had another thing to bring up, and now I forgot what it was, and it was going to be good, and now I forgot it.
About both of them failing, or?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Damn it. It was like like tangential. It was like a...
What's Wizards going to do?
Oh, I remember what it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I remembered.
Go ahead.
All right. So